Okay, thank you for joining. This is Pulkit, one of the co-founders of Chameleon. Very excited to tell you about this new builder that we've been working for a few months and show you some previews and kind of tell you a little bit about how to get access. So our goal for 2020 really focused is around improving usability. So part of that includes an easier and quicker way to build experiences, which we'll talk about. And that includes, easier discoverability, the depth of functionality that we have. Sometimes it's not super obvious. We definitely want to work on experience management. We probably will going to be switching away from the sidebar as you know it over the course of the year. So, there's a few different places where you experience Chameleon. I think we're going to be moving much more and building out our dashboard functionality where you can do more things like targeting or setting up a segment, seeing lists of users, better analytics, better management of tours. So a lot of that stuff we'll be pulling out of the sidebar because we know it's constrained. It's not very easy to do all of that stuff. It can get difficult. So we'll be moving a lot of that stuff into the dashboard. But initially we focused a lot on the experience of building. And so that's where this kind of builder comes from. So this is kind of our general focus. We will also be, for sure, there's lots of other little improvements around security, there's improvements around surveys functionality, other components, etc. So there's lots of stuff coming for sure, but broadly, we want to improve the user experience on a lot of our pieces. So here we go, let's dive in into some of the changes that are coming with this new builder. So we have this, what you might know as Chameleon sidebar or top bar, but referencing it as a Chameleon builder. So firstly, there will be, it will be via the Chrome extension to be able to edit or enter and exit the builder. So we're trying to simplify this. The Chrome extension will always let you be able to enter or exit the builder very quickly and easily. It'll be tab specific, which means that if you have opened the builder on one tab, you will not automatically have the builder open on other tabs, which I know has been a frustrating experience where, you might have editing Chameleon and then you forget about it, you come back into a different, open your product in a different tab and you have to wait for the Chameleon sidebar to load. It's frustrating. I know I've experienced that myself. And so we'll be getting rid of that. So you can actually be working in your product in the second tab as if you were in what used to be called end user mode or test mode. And the Chameleon builder will only be attached to that specific tab. So it'll be tab specific. It'll be really easy to exit it at any time. So instead of being able to open and close the builder, you'll be entering and exiting the builder. And so the green tab that you might be familiar with to open and close the sidebar will be removed such that you just have the ability to exit it, and that whole sidebar will be gone. There won't be any remnants of Chameleon on the page. You can always really easily enter it from the Chrome extension by clicking Enter Builder. So that will mean that if you're recording screenshots or doing anything else, you won't have to have that green tab always available or always showing on your page. We'll also have made it easier to access it from the dashboard. So sometimes, we have in the Chameleon dashboard, there are these buttons on the top right, create a tour, edit a tour, etc. And sometimes it was kind of confusing where that would go, or, it wouldn't necessarily open up the builder in the right place. Now you click that, you'll get a modal. You can set which page you want to go to and enter the builder on that page. So that whole entering and exiting experience will hopefully be a lot smoother and a lot less annoying. So that's kind of one of the core fundamental improvements. Let me know if you have any questions. I don't see any, but thanks, Rajat, for the positive affirmation. We hope it is going to make the usability much, much better. Okay, yeah, feel free to answer questions. Okay, so the second big kind of change is we're going to be, previously a lot of the configuration was in the top bar. You had to kind of look around, figure out where stuff is, how to get access to some things. It was pretty deep. So we're simplifying that. So the top bar is going to be for navigation only, which means you can kind of move between navigate, editing, preview, and between steps in the top bar. And then we'll have these panels which will be draggable and kind of inline for all of the configurations. And I'm actually going to go show you this live in a minute. Let me just get through the deck. And so you'll be able to, on each step or any Chameleon experience, you'll have these kind of at the bottom of the step, these icons or these gateways, these three. Hopefully you can see what I'm referencing, but here I'm drawing my screen now, and this is where you'll be able to configure steps. So the first thing will be, you can add components to the step. This will be all about transitions and actions between the step, going forward and showing, etc. And this is where the step is located on the page or which URL, etc. Again, I'll go through this, and hopefully this will become fairly clear as you start to use Chameleon. But you'll be able to access configurations from that, and all of the configurations will be in these panels, so that there are a lot more near where you're actually making those changes. And this will also gives us the platform to be able to do a lot more going forward in terms of adding components or adding configuration functionality. We also found the top bar very restrictive in terms of where to put stuff and how we, where we presented options. And it was hard to have new folks joining your team discover how to use Chameleon. The learning curve was steep. So hopefully this will make the learning curve much easier and make the whole process much more intuitive. Okay, any questions on this piece? Yeah, I mean, hopefully, many of you are probably, product people. There's a lot of work. We essentially revamped this and rebuilt it, so that there is a lot of work that's gone into it, even though change may or may not seem significant to you. Okay, third big kind of improvement has been the improvement of the launchers design. Now we're seeing more folks use launchers. We understand that users prefer self-service in many cases, and we're seeing this pattern being used by lots of companies where maybe they're building it in-house, where they have a kind of go-to widget. And we felt our launchers, weren't up to the mark stylistically. So some pieces that we've tried to improve. So you can make, there's an example of a launcher on the right. You can remove the title of the launcher. You can make the description optional. You can adjust kind of the styling of each of these separate items more easily. The spacing is improved. We've added this horizontal line component, so you can add that into a launcher. So when I'll show you the launchers UX, you'll see it's a lot more configurable, and hopefully this will lead to you creating much more effective and beautiful launchers that you can help users engage with. A question about icons to launcher elements. That is something that we've considered. We will be adding other components to launchers and surveys. Icons is one of those components. Right now, you can add an emoji as part of the text field. So that's not a bad start. But in terms of a more different icon, that is something that we've considered as part of our roadmap. And then the kind of last kind of big piece, there's been infrastructure improvements and performance improvements. We've broken out kind of when things load to be even more, timely. We're going to be waiting till most of your page loads before we start loading Chameleon. So there's been various performance improvements. We're actually using a new CDN for anyone that cares about that. So there'll be a lot of that's kind of under the hood, but hopefully it'll be snappier to build and lighter load for end users. With this image, you can see we've improved this, how to configure survey responses. So one thing that maybe wasn't obvious was that you can actually configure for each of the responses, comments steps in a survey, what the content of the step should say. So maybe if you're running an NPS survey with Chameleon, you want to have a different question for those who are promoters versus passives or versus detractors, different call to action, etc. in the text comments. So you can always do that, but maybe it was like not very easy to discover. So we've made that a little bit easier in terms of discoverability. We've made other improvements, such as like steps showing up on the page, even if they don't match the underlying page, and we'll just kind of make that clear to you so that you don't get to a place where you're having to navigate to the specific page before you see the step, or there's any issues around seeing the step. So you'll always be able to see the step even if the element is not present when you're in editing mode. Obviously, when you're in previewing, it'll match what it would look like for a user, but when you're editing, we'll give you more, it's easier to access the step. Okay, let me switch over to the chat quickly and look at the questions. Yeah, hopefully, thanks for the comments. The learning curve, yeah, hopefully we'll make the learning curve much easier with these improvements. There's also another piece that we'll be building, which will be something called the playground in the dashboard, where you'll be able to test Chameleon in a sandbox environment. And so that's aimed at new users, but also new users of existing teams to go and learn the basics of Chameleon. So that's something that's coming up. Okay, how does this enhance the experience of specifying each step? I'm not quite sure I fully understand the question. So let me know, maybe Roger, you can expand on that. You can always create templates for a step. And so if you want to reuse an existing step type, you can obviously duplicate a tool, but you can also custom create your templates and then reuse those again. But this should improve the experience of making, it'll be easier to find where to make changes or specify steps. So hopefully that does enhance the experience. Yes, so can we change the location of a launcher, like attach it to an element the way you can with a tooltip? You can actually, okay, good question. So today for a launcher widget, if you're using a widget, whether that's your own custom icon or one of the default icons that Chameleon provides, they are only available on the corners of the screen. That is an enhancement we want to improve and make, and I think we can. You can attach a launcher to an element if you use the element as the target for opening the menu. So instead of a widget, you can, when someone hovers or clicks on an element, then the menu can appear. So you essentially would replace the widget with an element in that instance. So that way you can adjust the launcher. But if you're using a widget, then it's currently not attachable to an element. Let me know, happy to discuss that or learn a bit more about what you're trying to do. Hopefully just opening it from an element solves that, but maybe not. You can always offset things. So wherever you see offset options, you can always offset based on percentages as well as pixels. So, you could move something 10%, and that makes it a little bit more responsive than moving at 10 pixels, which is be a fixed distance. Will this recording be available? Not sure yet. Probably not immediately, actually. Okay, another question. Attaching tooltips and tool steps to embedded third-party tools is difficult. So I think that's a good question. It's already pretty hard to function with all the different components and CSS structures that different applications have. Don't think we're planning on tackling that broadly for third-party tools. If there's any kind of structural fundamental issues with that you come across, then we're open to improving that. But we try to, yeah, it's a big, I guess, rabbit hole to be able to work with a whole different kinds of CSS structures on pages. But if, for example, a third-party component has a class or something, we can attach to the class or something that would be helpful. So Liz asked, can we add I don't know what you mean with programmatically, but you can add an icon to your page, and that icon is the launcher, yes. So you could create your own, dev icon on the page or element, and then that can cause the launcher to appear. Okay, before we go into the access program, let's dive in. Oops. Okay. Let's dive in and I'll show you some of these pieces. So I have a few different environments, excuse me for that. But okay, so here's, for example, you'll see this panel, this exit. And if you click this, the builder will just disappear completely. And actually you'll be in end user mode. So you'll see experiences as if an end user would see them. And so, that's kind of immediate experience there. And then you can very easily enter the builder again from the Chrome extension. So that's going to be the flow for entering and exiting the builder. And then in here, let's look at some of the pieces that I referenced. So here's a step. You'll notice the slimmed up top bar. You can always exit the top bar, the whole Chameleon builder from this top right. And so that's always available. There's a navigation, and then you can navigate between steps easily. And then you have this canvas panel. This canvas panel basically looks at the basics of the step, or like this overall canvas of the step. You can add components. So if I click on this add menu, you can see the different components. We've included a title component, as you see. So you can have two different kinds of step text stylings. You also notice that the image is on the left, so we've added some additional options on image positioning, and we'll be improving and adding more options on this as we go. And you can click into any of these to further configure what happens with the dismiss, or you can just directly click the button to see what's happening here. So that's kind of the UI that we're moving towards, is these kind of inline panels. So that's kind of components. This is transitions or actions. So things like triggering on a page, auto scrolling, how someone moves forward, not including the button actions, obviously, but how someone moves forward or dismisses outside of those animations. So you can kind of define some of those transitions on the step level from here. And then this is the kind of location. So, what's the URL match type, and kind of what the input URL is. Do you need something specific to a content or element to appear on the page? And then where, on the page, where is this position? So those are the three main panels, or three main sections for a step. And then you can, of course, navigate, preview, or navigate, etc. So that's some stuff on tours. And then I can show you the launcher example. So we've made some significant improvements here. You used to have to use the sidebar to be able to add items, etc. So now you can just go straight into this launcher, and you'll see that you can add components in here. So whether you want to add tours, surveys, links, etc., you can add these very easily from here. You can also, we've pulled, various other pieces into this. We've added the divider component, so you can have this divider, and then you can, move this up and down, etc. So some stuff around there. You can adjust, you can decide to add a title or not. Again, you can set the location of this launcher based on this. You can adjust the widget, of course, and like we were referencing in those questions, so this is a widget that's custom text, and you can change the text just by typing in this, and you can style it as well. But if you wanted, you could have your own icon. So you could have someone hovering over an icon, and you can upload your own icon, and that way that would appear. Or if you wanted to use an element on the page, you could say, okay, click an element on the page. And then I can find that you can put your own icon in there, or put your own navigation aspect, and then the launcher would appear based on that element. There are definitely some improvements to this that will be coming up, both around positioning, but there is some scope to do that. So that, I'm just going to switch back and talk and see if there's some questions or chat. 1 second. Okay, so let's look at questions. Are there plans to open up surveys to allow users to add additional steps? For example, to ask NPS promoters if we can use their feedback in marketing materials. There are no plans to add additional steps in surveys. The reason is it's a slippery slope to the kind of survey that is ineffective, which is the web-based multi-step survey. That's what's given surveys a bad reputation, and response rates are really low. And so we have seen that NPS has been really effective, because part of it is the format is really simple: one question and then text responses. So we're not planning on changing that, because we want to drive and keep your response rates high and force you to really be specific about what you need to ask and when you need to ask it. You can break up your questions into multiple surveys. Now, for example, if you get a response from promoter, let's say you want to target promoters, you can target other community experiences, including other surveys, based on people's responses to their previous survey. So you could set up a second survey and say, hey, only to people who are promoters, or who've answered this previous NPS survey as a promoter. Ask them this other question, can we get a quote from you? etc. So you can definitely target based on survey responses. You can also link to another survey from the button of a survey or in a step. So button actions are really powerful. You can always use that to take someone. So you could kind of hack it together to build a longer survey by taking people from one survey to the other, but that's not really the goal here. We want to keep it really succinct and short. Okay, question, can a launcher guide you to the specific page of the tour? Yes, it can. So if, for example, you have a launcher and you have a tour in here and the tour starts on a different page, then as long as that page is loadable and you have some options in there, then the launcher would take you to that page. Now, just to expand on that a little bit, now when you're doing that, you have to for a tour to appear as available within the launcher to select and add inside of a launcher, it needs to be a manual tour. That means it's not automatically shows to people, but it actually, when they start it from a launcher or via a URL or via the API, it can begin. And here you can configure which URL to take someone to when they are loading that from that link or from the launcher. And so the reason why we split these delivery methods is because we track, we allow A/B testing or control group testing, and we want to make sure that the data is robust when something is automatic. And we put people into in and out groups, etc. And switching it to manually really messes with that data and doesn't give you clarity in terms of how successful the tour is. So you do have to make a manual tour. The other difference is that manual tours can be a little different. When people are starting a tour themselves, you can make it a little bit more intricate, a little longer, a little bit more like a traditional walkthrough. When you create an automatic tour, essentially this is an in-app ad. So you need to think of it as an in-app ad. So I'd recommend one, maximum two-step tour in this case. And you're really trying to drive discovery or awareness. And you should think about like, how can we drive clicks on that? So the kind of tour, the content, the style of the tour should also be drastically different based on if you're expecting someone to start it manually and they're opting in to learn more, dive deeper, versus automatically when you're just showing it to them without their kind of specific approval. So think of it almost like an email versus a help doc. So that's why there is an important difference here. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, I'm going to go switch the chat because I think there's some questions on the chat as well. Okay. When will this, okay, let's just go. So when will this be available? So this is in beta to some customers already. I'll talk about access in a minute. Can we edit the height and width of steps? Yes, there is more configuration around setting heights and widths, as well as media heights and widths. A private video, that's not really the realm of this. You really do need to have a video hoster or provider. We don't take video uploads. You have to upload it somewhere else and have the player be there. Don't have any plans for us to host videos anytime soon. The Chameleon logo, the top bar sometimes overlaps and messes my layout. Yeah, this, we've worked through this in many cases. There are still some edge cases where apps are built in a way that there's conflicts with the Chameleon top bar. If you send us a support ticket with a video of this happening and give us access to your environment, we can look into that. But it just basically, it depends on how people set up applications. It does work for the majority of cases. Okay, I think I've worked through most of those questions. Send me a question on Q&A if you have any other questions. But I'll talk a little bit about how to get access, and then we can wrap up early so that we can give you some time back. I would, of course, love feedback if there's any other feedback or suggestions. Okay, so we are in beta already as of last week with some customers. We are slowly rolling out. We will probably go into GA in something like 3 weeks. So you can get access into the beta. Now, some stuff, what that means is that it is a change for the whole team. So it's not just that an individual can have access to the new builder and a different person on your in your Chameleon account would have the old builder. It is account wide, so everyone would have access. During the beta, we require you to download a separate Chrome extension, which we will. It's not through the web store. It's through a separate link. You have to download that, upload it manually, and use that extension. When we go into GA, that won't be necessary. Your existing Chrome extension will be updated to function like this, but during the beta, there is a separate Chrome extension step that you'd have to go through, and we do expect feedback. So there's some written feedback that we expect in a form, as well as a 30-minute call. So that is kind of what early access would include. If you are interested, we're probably looking for a few additional participants next week. So please just email us at beta@trichameleon.com if you're interested, and we can see if we can get that set up for you. So yeah, looking forward to getting your feedback. Like I mentioned, we will finish up some of the polish and improvements and fixes on this builder. We're going to switch our focus to the dashboard and substantially improve how the dashboard works and what functionality you have available there. And then we'll be going back into adding more components and functionality into the builder. Okay, great. Some other questions. Attaching a tooltip or tool step to a specific element when there is more than one of the same element on the page can be a problem. Any updates there? That we do have the ability to attach to, for example, the first element out of a set in the element selector. The other option is for you to use custom CSS paths. So you can use the child, which child is it of the parent, and add that as part of your custom CSS path. And that should work for you there. That's a response to Jasmine's question. All existing content, yes, will retain. So this is not about, you're in the same account, you'll have all your live experiences will not be affected if you're using the beta in any way. All of your content you've built in your account will still be present. There's no effect or change to that. It's not like we're resetting your account to a new account. It is just the user experience of building new experiences will be different. So yeah, all of the content will remain. There is no risk or harm to that content. The other difference in the beta is that it does use our new infrastructure, a new CDN, new infrastructure. So there is a change there. Hopefully that's just a positive change in terms of speeding up everything. But that would also be for end users. End users, if we switch your account, would be served Chameleon experiences using our new infrastructure. Great. Okay. So it seems like a pretty good discussion. Performance improvements. So Raj asked about performance improvements. Yeah, there's a bunch of different things rolled in. A better CDN using Fastly, which will mean that I think, yeah, there are more locations. I don't know the specifics of locations, but there are more global locations for content to be served. There's also improvements in terms of what is loaded. So for example, when someone first loads the page, until they're identified, they won't load, we're breaking up what loads for them based on when they're identified. We're also delaying when Chameleon starts loading on the page based on when the on-page event is, or a page complete event is fired. So that will give space for anything from your end that needs to load first to load, and then Chameleon will load. It will not be a negligible impact to end users in terms of there won't be a delay in seeing a Chameleon experience. It might be something like a quarter-second delay, so it will be negligible, but it will improve or when folks are looking at performance testing, it will improve that. So hopefully that kind of answers some of your questions, Rajat. But if you have any specific questions, let us know. I can also double check in terms of any specific locations that will be improved based on the new CDN. Okay, another question that I've received in the Q&A. We found that while there are nice options as to what elements we anchor tips to, you can kind of funky around iframes. Yeah, okay. So typically, with iframes, it needs to be, make sure Chameleon is obviously installed inside of the iframe and outside. I think it's hard for me to answer your question without knowing the specifics. It's probably not a general problem, but a specific problem based on how the content within the iframe is structured and what CSS repositioning you're doing, etc. So I think that's a probably better, easier for us to answer if you send us a video recording through the help center. So we have in the dashboard a place for you to, I'll send a link now, submit any videos. The videos really help us get better context. And so, really to be able to help us, troubleshoot anything, sending us a video of what you're seeing and how it's behaving, and then giving us access so we can recreate it, will be helpful. You can target content within an iframe, yes, but Chameleon needs to be installed within that iframe too. You can't, if Chameleon is not installed with inside of the iframe, what will happen is that you'll just get the whole iframe as the targeting option. You will not be able to select components within the iframe. So please make sure Chameleon is installed within the iframe. Great. Okay, lots of good questions and detailed questions. Anything else? Feature requests, Abdul asked, can we get tool groupings? Yeah, yes, that's going to be part, I guess, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but we are going to be working on experience management. So how do we, whether it's folder structures or how else you can better understand and manage and organize your experiences in the dashboard over the next months. That's a high request. I don't know if you mean something else by tool groupings, but experience management is there part of a roadmap and the next kind of amongst the next focus areas. Okay, I think that's it. Abdul asked about one-to-one calls. We only do one-to-one calls for growth plan customers. We have a lot of startup customers. It's really hard to support that for startup customers, unfortunately. But you can always submit a support ticket. If you do want kind of more of the one-to-one training, teaching, questions, Zoom calls, I think we do need you to be on a growth plan, and I can send you some details on that and send a link. And we're happy to help you work through kind of specific troubleshooting. We provide kind of regular coaching, bits and pieces. Great. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate your time and looking forward to sharing this with you. So yeah, thanks again. Have a good rest of the day.